as you can see, I've got a PowerPoint here for today. We're going to talk about flipping or versus investing. Flipping being the process where you're trying to buy things under market or beat things to market to sell cards, and the advantage there being that that the chance to make profit is more consistent. The problem being, of course, that there's less risk. The problem being, of course, it's more work intensive and requires you to be constantly churning. But investing, which would be sort of the opposite thing, or to some extent really speculating, is sort of the opposite, where you're amassing things you're not selling for a while until the price goes up to the point that you predicted or you like, in which you can turn a profit and sell. So those are the two things we're talking about today. And the reason that I'm focused on this phenomenon is because I've recently seen a lot of cards just sort of skyrocket in price that that we've been surprised by. Well, I wouldn't say I've been surprised that I've seen, for example, Team Up skyrocket or some of the evolutions in Japanese and other Japanese product, but more surprised that it's done so quickly and by so much. Certainly, I think it's expected that cards over age will accumulate in value, especially what are sort of almost objectively cool-looking cards, if there aren't more being printed. And so I wanted to run through a few sales that I made at some point, because I would classify myself more as a flipper right now, talking about the profit I made and really what I lost out on from not holding onto the product for longer, and sort of surveying those pros and cons of just selling everything off, way farther down the line, or doing it consistently all the time by churning and burning. So first, I would say that I believe that even Pokemon investing is realistically gambling, and I think a lot of people look at this area realistically, admit it too. Now, I think I have sort of a greater scope of gambling than most people. I think like even investing in the stock market is gambling to some extent. Just because it's a safe bet doesn't mean that it's gambling, because you could very well lose your money, and you're putting it out into the world, hoping on an outcome or betting on an outcome that is better. And, just as if, for example, you could bet on a football team to win at least one game for the season, that being an almost certain bet the vast majority of the time, one that you're not going to lose. It's still a bet at the end of the day, and that's the way I approach even investing in the U.S. stock market, and certainly the way I approach investing in what we would call sort of more stable cards, which is higher graded, older vintage cards, those with smaller supply. If you're not putting your money into riskier bets in the Pokemon market, it's still, I believe, to be gambling. In part because it's not just also dependent on the market, which is a big deal, because first off, you never know when you're going to need that money. And that's where it comes to disposable income too, and unpredictable trends. It's the very fact that you could have a car crash tomorrow, theoretically. And if you don't have enough liquidity to, pay your deductible, or depending on the state you live in, buy a new car, then you're going to have to pull it out of your collection. And so you don't know that the precise moment when you have to sell your cards or sell your stocks or whatever is also going to be the moment in which it's most ideal. It could very well be the case that the time in which you need the money is when the market's at a low and you'll be losing a lot of money. So that's why I also look at it as gambling to an extent. I mean, you look at the way that our markets have moved over the last few years during COVID, where we had both peaks and valleys. If there was a time when you needed to pull out the money out of the stock market when it was at its low, the last year low or whatnot, because we've had since a rise in about 10% in the stock market and the S&P, then you would have been sort of screwed. It's only investing for those that really can wait to hold out until they are comfortable pulling out and selling their stock. So that's why I still consider it risky to some extent, although there are safer investments and less safe, and why it's sort of gambling. So moving on to some of these cards where you can see the money I made or didn't make had I just waited. Let's start with the Stamp Box Pikachu. So I've actually owned a lot of Stamp Box Pikachus over the time. I've graded several myself. But specifically what happened is there were these PSA 10 ones that I saw on PWCC, and back in March or so, I bought like 7 of them. 7 or 8, I don't exactly remember, at $312 a piece. Which is a decent amount of money to put up front, especially into one card. I pretty much bought everything that was available that week, which I thought was a good price. it had been lower than I'd seen in previous weeks. I thought at the very least I could turn around and sell it for $400, which even then was sort of market price, and make a little bit of a profit even with fees taken out. And that's sort of what I did. So I sold several of them. I still have 2 left out of the 7. I have sold the other 5 by now. And you can see that I had 2 sell prices back to back. I had one that I sold on May 27th and one on the 29th. And the difference was $200 in between them, because for some reason the price of it skyrocketed after the 27th, and right now they're going for about $700. And so if you're a investor, or even really speculator, we're going to look at this and say, well, Eli, you were dumb to sell and not hold on to it. This card it looks gorgeous. It's in short supply. The Japanese market, it's hot right now. You shouldn't have sold. You should have waited till it skyrocketed. You lost out on $1,000 by selling your 5 cards before it went up in $200 in price, which is one way to look at it. I mean, the way that I like to look at it, and the reason why I justify it, is that, well, I still made at least $50, even subtracting fees, on each of the ones I sold earlier. I still have a few left that I'm selling for more, that I've been able to gain on, which is terrific. And then, the biggest thing is that it was a safe investment, or a safe flip, because I knew at the time the cards were already around $400 in market price. I was buying them for $312. I knew there was a decent amount of leeway between the price I bought and the market price at the time, and so it was a safe thing to do. The idea that I would lose money on this was very low, or the chance that I would lose money. And so it's very possible that the opposite could have happened had I waited a long time. Had I waited a year to sell this, it's possible the market never skyrocketed, and I would have just had all my money sitting in slabs, doing absolutely nothing with it. And in the meantime, I've been able to sell the slabs, make $50 a piece on the ones I sold earlier, and then reinvest that into new inventory to continue churning. So that illustrates one of the big differences. And I've got several examples of stuff like this. So for example, you've got this one. This is a Japanese Latios and Latias. I bought it for $220 from CGC, or from PWCC last summer, back when they first started their own platform. I cross-graded it to a PSA 10. I sold it for $900. I was pretty ecstatic. I made like $600+ subtracting fees on this one slab. I felt terrific about it. And had I just waited another 6 months, it would have doubled in price again. It would be up to $1,800. I personally look at it as a huge bonus that I made that much money on one single card. I felt great about it. It's sort of difficult. You should to look forward and see what could have been. But I think as many people in the Pokemon hobby talk about as well, first off, the money I've made, I've put, once again, into other products to expand my inventory. Second of all, this was fair market price at the time that I sold it. So, it's not like I was ripped off. I still made a lot of money on it at the time. And, finally, you win some and you lose some. This could have, with the last slab I talked about, this very possibly could have stayed the same price, or it could have fallen in price. You just never know. There are so many alt arts, especially in the Sword Shield era nowadays, although this is Sun and Moon, where we've actually seen both gains and losses. Look at the Charizard from Brilliant Stars, the alt art. It's lost value, and it's very hard to depend on one slab doing so well. And so that's why I like to constantly have my money moving in and out. So there's that one. I'll give you a few more examples. So I have the English one, which I've graded a few times now, or I've bought and sold a few times now. I bought one recently, for example, or last summer, I guess, for $250. I graded it, came out of PSA 9. I sold it for $450 at Collectathon, and now it's at around $700. I mean, the bigger issue I had is I've actually acquired several at around $200 back when it was around $200, during the boom, actually, of 2020. That's where it went to. And I earnestly thought, which I think was I thought it was well-reasoned. I earnestly thought that was the peak for this card. I thought this was the most pricey card and the most popular card from the Sun and Moon era. You had more money than ever coming into the Pokemon hobby, specifically people looking for this card. And so I was looking at $200. It was, at that time, the most expensive team-up card, or a tag team card. And still, despite that, Although this is actually not the English version. Now I realize that I pasted in this picture. Or is it? Anyway, this was the top card, and so I just assumed that it wouldn't go any higher. And look at us now; it's $600-700 raw, and also around the same price for PSA 8s. PSA 10s now are a ridiculous price, and it's just something to be said for the fact that some of this stuff we can't predict. This was random. If we went back 2 years ago, if there's someone I'm watching who 2 years ago said, hey, that team up set, that's the most expensive in the set, that's $200 right now during the boom. Oh, that's actually like a low and it will triple or quadruple in price in the next year. It's like, fucking tell me. That is wizardry to know that. It's prophecy. Because simply, I just don't believe that anyone could have predicted the increase on this card given the fact that it was already gone up so much during the boom. I'll give you another example. Lily. I had several Lilies. I made like $100 on them, I guess, a few of them. Now they're up to $500-600. This Eevee, this one killed. Okay, I generally don't get too butthurt over like not holding on to cards as they increase in value. I got butthurt about this one. The Munch Eevee. I've had many in my possession that I flipped over. I know Dan has also from Catching All Collectibles. He's had loads of them. So I cross-graded this one from CGC. I made several $100s on it after cross-grading. I felt great about it, but now it's going for as much as $1,500 to $1,700, which is absurd. I think that is simply absurd. I couldn't. Once again, this card has been out for years. We went through the boom, and still, despite the boom happening and everyone loving this card, still it somehow managed to triple its price. How does that make any sense? And when you're the one doing investments as opposed to flipping, you have to try to call shit like this. It's so unpredictable. There are safer bets, and there are less safe bets, but at the end of the day, you are betting towards the future. And that's just too much for me at some point. I would prefer to make these safe bets and to earn a consistent profit, even though, because, it requires more work, but at least I'm going to be only very rarely taking an L. And that's what I appreciate about it. So honestly, seeing this price, the skyrocketing price, I am seriously considering just cracking open some of the. I have a PSA 9 EV and I think I have a CGC 9 EV. I'm considering just cracking and submitting them both because even on the off chance they come back at 10, like it's a pretty big profit there. Same thing with the Rowlet. I mean, the Rowlet didn't go up nearly as much in price, but still, same story. I've sold 2 PSA 10s now of that. I had a bunch of Evolutions, Japanese ones, that are now skyrocketing in price. I got them. I literally bought it for like $50, $55, and then paid to grade it. So the 70 is inclusive of grading fees. And I felt great about selling it for $140, which is with fees excluded. So I sold it for like $170, I don't remember, and then $140 was my takeaway. I literally doubled what my investment. And still, here we are. A matter of months later, $300, and who knows if it's going to keep going up. This one also killed me a little bit, actually, because I had 3 of these Gardevoir and Sylveon cards, 3 of them. And I made, once again, like $100 on each of them. I felt great about that, but knowing that had I held on to it for 6 more months, it would have gone to $600 does kill me a little bit on the inside. To be fair, by selling this card, I had the funds to go in on those stamp box Pikachu. So, hey, you're always growing. But I understand how someone can be a little bit beat when that happens. So, anyway, overall, I just want to give you a perspective of some of the stuff I've been going through in the way that I've been thinking about these cards that I've been flipping. And sorry again for my messy room behind us. We do have a lot of bulk that we sell. But genuinely, I do think that the process of turning and burning and going through inventory and making a steady and consistent profit on it is the way to go frequently. I sell a lot of singles, for example. I buy around here. I offer 60% of market. I'll sell it on TCG Player and make about a 20 to 30% margin. On bulk, I make even more, although that's far more work intensive and the margins are just in absolute terms smaller. But still, I think the reliability of knowing that you can consistently make 20 to 30% on a card, as opposed to having to bet and lock your money away, there's a real benefit to that. And as someone who's personally just more risk averse, I like a way to engage with a hobby, make it sustainable, where I can continue amassing a collection because I am, continuing to acquire stuff as I put money in and flip stuff. But I certainly do appreciate the fact that I'm not going to lose everything I have, and that I can continue growing my collection without having to risk continual money. And if you look at Dan's story too, he started with like $500, $5,000. I don't remember. It was a very small amount, and only through, with help from the market sort of blowing up in 2020. But in addition, just the constant churn and burn does grow your collection, and all it takes is growing your collection at a 20% rate consistently, to get you up very high with that sort of interest rate going up. Than you betting it all and not having the churn, because it's very possible the cards you buy for an investment you could make barely anything on, or 10% on within a year. Whereas if you're constantly churning through on 20% margins, you're going to be able to amass something a lot greater, I think. Anyway, I would love to answer any questions you all have. I'll maybe make another video. I see that we don't really have any viewers, so I'll leave this up for posterity for those that want to look at my transaction that I made here. Thanks for watching, and have a great one, y'all.